Ba 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 da da. Hip and the lip. Ba 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 ba. Hip and the lip. Good evening from unknown parts of metropolitan New York City. I am the Hip, and this is the Lip.
Good evening, everybody, on this Monday evening, the 28th day of March, 2016. All right.
All right, thank you very much for that almost to the minute update of where we are this second in time. Thank you, Timothy, or the Lip. This is a New York Islanders podcast. It is late March, and what does that mean? It is crunch time. Indeed, there are only 8 games to go in the regular season for your New York Islanders.
Wow. Amazing.
We are down to single digits here, and we're far from being locked into anything at this point. And so, tonight is, kind of treading these murky waters that the Islanders are swimming in. Or maybe you want to say slippery ice that they're skating on. That'd be a better crappy pun.
That's a pretty H pun. I like that. It's very slip slope.
And just kind of get a feel for where we're at here. So, as what seems customary to this point, let's do our standings update. In the Metropolitan Division, yes, of course, your Washington Capitals are in first place with 113 points. In second place with 95 points, 76 games played, New York Rangers. In third place, no, you're not your New York Islanders. You're Pittsburgh Penguins at 92 points and 75 games played. The Islanders are 3 points behind Pittsburgh at 89 points with 74 games played. So the Islanders have 1 game in hand on Pittsburgh and 2 games in hand on the Rangers. Again, though, they're 6 points behind the Rangers. But right on the Islanders' tail now are your Philadelphia Flyers, who tonight have already completed their victory. An overtime victory against the Winnipeg Jets. So that puts the Flyers at 87 points, only 2 points behind the Islanders. But the Islanders have a game in hand there. So a tight race, no question. And, you flip over to the Atlantic Division and the team on the outside looking in, Detroit. I shouldn't say on the outside looking in. I should say the wild card team, Detroit, with 85 points. Does that include tonight's win? Because they just did beat the Buffalo Sabres.
Up to 87 points now with the Red Wings. So them
now
and the
they've
Flyers
actually gone
are
up to 87.
At 87 points apiece.
The way that this is kind of looking, though, is that there is some significant separation now between the 8th and 9th teams in the Eastern Conference. Because so Detroit and Philadelphia both now have 87 points, 70. Detroit has 76 games, Flyers 75. But next closest team is Carolina, who, perhaps not so coincidentally, the Islanders will be playing tomorrow night. So the Islanders can really distance themselves from, feeling like at the precipice of not making the playoffs at least, with a strong victory over Carolina tomorrow night. But we'll get to that more. But first, we have to do our games recap, and we have 4 to walk you through this evening. The first brings us back to Barclays on March 21st, at which point we felt strong enough to state that this was the most important game for the Islanders of the season to date.
We did, and the Hip and the Lip were present at the Barclays Center for that one, and we sent out a couple Twitters alerting our listenership to the fact that we were there, and we were actually in a suite for that one. So that was quite an experience, I must say.
And that was the highlight
That was
of
the
our
highlight.
experience. I mean, we not only was it a suite, it was virtually center ice, which was amazing. And so, just having that view of the ice a little bit elevated, the away sportscasters, the visiting Islanders, I'm sorry, the Flyers play-by-play and color guy were right
Yeah,
there.
I yelled at Keith Jones. He heard me. I said, Keith, and he looked up and he gave me,
Oh,
hey.
he gave you that little wave or thumbs up. He's like, that son of a bitch, just shut the hell up. Annoying, nerdy fan who knows who I am.
Well, he's impressed with how knowledgeable the Islander fan base is, knowing who he is.
Well, maybe he just recognized the lip and he couldn't help himself but give away
That must be it. That's
thanking
probably
you
it.
for your contributions of your knowledge to the greater, NHL fan base.
Well, I should have said, hey Keith, give the lip a plug on on NBC Sports. When you're in studio, give Hip and the Lip a plug. I should have yelled at him to do that. Oh well, live and learn.
Yeah, I'm sure he definitely would have if he heard you. every broadcast since he would have. Only the plug for you though, of course. So,
well, just because like the guy that knew his name, that had the had the wherewithal to recognize him and yell out and scream his name so everybody could hear.
All right.
Well, 5 people in the arena at that point.
So there were a lot of Flyers fans at this game. I popped into a bar outside of Barclays before this game started, and it was like a 60-40 split Islanders-Flyers fans. They traveled well at this game, and the team outlasted the Islanders, and the Islanders came up very short in this game, 4-1, and it just the third period you just did not feel very good about this game, and what all it did was give the Flyer fans a lot of excitement, and now they're on the Islanders' tail in the standings.
Yeah, that they are. It was a terrible third period for the Islanders. Really, it was not a good game all around. I mean, they played a good first period. They had, I think it was a scoreless first period, if I remember correctly. Flyers got the first goal. Poso got the tying goal maybe like a minute and a half later, whenever it was. Good play by Poso, who's playing better now, and they're going to really need Poso to hit his stride down the stretch here and into the postseason. We'll get to that, though, in a little bit. But a terrible third period. The game-winning goal would end up being scored by Brandon Manning, and that was his first career NHL goal. And this is a guy that hasn't been in the league for 10 games. He's been he's been in the league for at least a couple of years, I think. And his first career NHL goal, of course, it's the game-winning goal in a game that we coined the Islanders' most important game of the season to date. So put that into context, as they really just a complete no-show in the third period there. And just seeing this guy scored a game-winning goal, it was a little bit of a unlucky a bounce for the Islanders that preceded the goal, as what would have been an icing. The puck hit the linesman. It slowed down for Manning to pick up. A bad play by Calvin DeHaan backing up on the play. You never back up on a guy that hasn't scored an NHL goal. You have to stand him up at the blue line, try and make a play on him. He didn't. It was a good shot, good play shot, as Greiss was in pretty good position. It was, again, a well-placed shot, but still, and I mean, that just, adds insult to injury, the fact that it was his first career NHL goal. And then the Flyers would get one more, and then one more after that to ice it.
I have to put us more on edge than I led us on to before with the standings update. I botched it because the Flyers and Red Wings are actually tied for the 8th spot, the second wild card spot at 87 points. So you're alluding to, I guess, by saying that if the Islanders win tomorrow, they can put some breathing room between them and the last. Yeah, but I miscalculated here when I was looking at it. I was just tallying up the teams wrong, thinking Carolina was the next closest team to the 8th spot. But
yeah, I was gonna, I guess, kind of very subtly bring it up a little bit later. The fact that both Detroit and Philadelphia and the Islanders will be competing for 2 spots, those 3 teams.
So I mean, that's basically how it looks right now. I mean, look, Boston, the thing is, with Boston only has 88 points, but they'd be the 3rd team in the Atlantic Division. So, either one of Boston or Detroit are getting in. So
right, yeah.
the team between Boston and Detroit that doesn't get in as one of the top 3 teams in the Atlantic Division is going to be fighting with the Islanders and the Flyers for the two wild card spots. Unless the Islanders can make a push here and put some heat on Pittsburgh, they've kind of slipped a little, and that I think the road trip. That they came out with a great record on that road trip, but it had high and it had its fair share of low moments, and this inconsistent play has pretty much continued since.
Yeah, well, we talked in our last podcast about despite their 6-1 road trip that spanned seemed like 3 weeks, from middle of February to beginning of March. While they had a good record, they didn't really play all that well, but they were playing inferior competition, and you saw what happened when they started playing good teams. When they lost to Dallas and Nashville, they start playing good teams, and you see what happens. The chickens come home to roost, and they looked bad in multiple losses that they've had now over the last couple of weeks, including that Flyer game. And we'll get into another loss that they sustained this past week on Friday. But hey, look, it's there's no wiggle room. There's no room for error. I mean, they have to, they really have to start playing better hockey if they want to make the playoffs. It is not a foregone conclusion that they will make it, as you touched on, and they right now are looking like they are every bit the bubble team that they are.
Yeah, I mean, if the season ended today, and let's say the playoffs were starting in 2 days, I would not. I wouldn't feel comfortable against any team that they played against in the playoffs at all. I wouldn't feel that confident.
No, and they played the Lightning on Friday. They looked, we'll recap that one. They looked terrible in that game for a majority of that game. And I tell you, if they play, they don't want that second wild card spot. It won't. I mean, if they fall to the 8th wild card spot, then they would play Washington, which another team you don't want to play. But I tell you, if the Lightning win that division, and I think they will. They sit, I think, tied right now with the Panthers. So, I mean, the Panthers could win, but I think that the Lightning will end up prevailing in that division. And that's a terrible matchup if they play Tampa Bay. They do not want Tampa Bay in the first round. That would be a terrible matchup for them. Tampa Bay just looked like they completely overmatched the Islanders on Friday. They really need to try and get back into either that one of the 2 or 3 spot in the Metropolitan Division. Because they match up much better with either Pittsburgh or the Rangers than they do Tampa or Washington.
I think we're gonna break script here. I think it's allowable for you to just go right into the Tampa Bay game. We'll go back to Ottawa in a few minutes, since we've alluded to it enough that it wouldn't make any sense to discuss otherwise. So just let it fly.
Well, I mean, the Ottawa game was a game that they had to win. They did. So that then brings us to, it was against the bad Ottawa team. I mean, there really isn't much to say about that game. They played okay, but, they won a game at home against an inferior team, which they should. But getting to that Tampa Bay game on Friday, it was really – the game had a lot of ebbs and flows to it. The Islanders actually, I think, had 3 power plays in like the first 12 minutes or whatever of the first period, and that was when they scored. I think this is one of the power plays expired. I think Nelson scored the first goal to give them a 1-0 lead. Oh, I scored a first period goal, stop the presses. But the Lightning would then dominate the last 5 minutes, score 2 goals within the span, I think, 9 seconds. And I'll just mention that Thomas Hickey, and I'd like to get on Brian straight, and rightfully so. But Thomas Hickey has been miserable over the last. Really, he's had a very inconsistent season, but he's had a couple of wretched games. Thomas Hickey, and the Tampa Bay game was one of the worst games I've seen him play as a pro. That second goal, I made a note of this. He actually made a terrible play behind the net. They dumped the puck in. There was a Tampa Bay forechecker right on him, and he put the puck right in front of his goal just blindly, and the puck was literally shot as the puck was coming from behind the net past Thomas Greiss for a 2-1 Tampa lead. They would score a third goal to make it 3-1. Islanders would come back to make it 3-3. And I think that was before the end of the second, and then Tampa would score to make it 4-3. Islanders would tie on a nice Kuhlman goal the tie at 4-4, and then Tampa Bay would pull away with 2 goals in the third period. The game-winning goal was Josh Bailey and Thomas Hickey tailing up to Thomas Hickey and Bailey teamed up to allow the create the Tampa Bay 6th goal, but that 5th goal, Bailey made a terrible play in the neutral zone, a soft neutral zone giveaway, and then Bailey basically put the puck in his own net by falling down as a rebound that was let up by Grice was left right in the goal mouth, and Bailey just tripped over himself or whatever, tripped over the blue paint, I guess, in the crease, and basically knocked the puck in his own net as Tyler Johnson was swatting away at it, and that was the game-winning goal. And on the 6th goal, another terrible play by Bailey, soft play in the neutral zone, and then Hickey pretty much forgets how to play defense for the sport of hockey as he decides to take the puck carrier as Ryan Pulak, his partner, is on him, and then he gets lost. The puck gets passed to, I forget who it was. It wasn't maybe Schuster, or maybe Garrison it was, who roofs it past Thomas Grice. And good night, game over, go home safely for all those in Tampa Bay's arena on Friday night. And Thomas Grice, who let up 6 goals in this game, had a very, very rough game. I think it was the 4th goal, I think it was the 4th goal that he allowed to Schuster, was a terrible goal, an unscreened slap shot from the point, one he has to have, terrible goal. Had trouble with his rebounds, but I mean, all in all, it was just a poor effort from the Islanders. Despite them coming back to tie the game multiple times, they really just looked slow against the Lightning. They looked like they could not keep up with their forecheck. They looked like they couldn't keep up with their transition game. They had no answer to it. They were out-Corsied for those advanced stat guys, 57-35 at even strength. So that, if you think that tells the tale, well, I think that tells a very, very telling picture of what took place on Friday.
It was the goals were scored in bunches in this game. Anytime the Islanders tried to come back, the Lightning just put an end to it quickly. Like you said, they scored 2 goals in 9 seconds. It was the Lightning did. That was I don't know. Anytime you thought the Islanders were gaining momentum in that game, Tampa Bay just shut it down. And one point that Butch Goring emphasized on multiple occasions were the rebounds from Thomas Grice. And so is that a skill that he still needs to develop? Can you develop it? Is it too late in the season to try to get a goalie to focus on that?
Well, Thomas Grice can be very aggressive at times, which, some goalies, and actually Butchie was also pointing out how Ben Bishop, the 6'6" or whatever he is, Tampa Bay goalie, kept, his game. He likes to stay back in his crease. He doesn't like to come out and challenge, shooters. That's the type of game he plays. Most goalies are taught that, to at times, that they have to pick their spots, but look to challenge. But when you give up rebounds, when you challenge, you're going to leave yourself susceptible to putting in, tap-in goals with wide open nets. And, while Grice has played, pretty well since Halak has gone down, at least for the most part, he really hasn't seized on his opportunity to grab that number one. And now, the Islanders are basically in a situation with J.F. Berube, where they don't know who their number one goalie is going down the stretch. And that's something that they're going to have to figure out, because once the playoffs start, you don't want a situation where you're guessing as to who gives you the best chance. You want to have a number one. Now, you can have a shorter leash for that guy if he doesn't perform, which you expect, but you don't want a situation where you're saying, okay, well, this guy, I think, had a couple decent games last week. We'll play him. You don't want that. You want a number one guy that grabs that job going into the postseason. I understand there's only a couple weeks left in the season, but Grice really has not done it since Halak has gone down, and they're going to give Berube now an opportunity. And while he was a little shaky against Carolina, he has definitely demonstrated that he is a capable goalie, and we'll see how that situation plays itself out.
Yeah, if you're in the playoffs, and I guess if we're lucky, fortunate enough for the Islanders to make the playoffs, and you have, let's say, Grice starting game one, and he lets up 3 goals in 5 minutes in the second period, and you put in Berube. Now is Berube your number one goalie? Are they going to go back to Grice in game 2? These are hypothetical questions that are not meant to be answered right now, but I could see it, unfortunately, going down this path where it's more of a distraction than a confidence inducer, because Grice has been okay, but you haven't seen him. You haven't seen the snippets of spotlight play that he had more backing up Halak extrapolate into a more full-time, job. So we'll see how if he could step it up down the home stretch.
Yeah, I mean, well, the bottom line is Thomas Christ has never been a number one goalie in the NHL, and it just may be that he is suited to be a backup goalie. And it's I guess an analogy that I'll draw to baseball. I know the last baseball analogy I drew, that you didn't particularly care for, but I'll draw one here. It's like when a utility player, it's like when a utility player or a bench player that is good in that role, when all of a sudden he has to play every game because of an injury, and you start to see the warts on that player, and you start to see that he is just not good enough to hold down an everyday job. And it may be the case here with Thomas Greiss, that he is a backup goalie and he can excel in that job, but he is not a number one where he can play most of the games, or at least perform well in, when he has more work. And, I'm not saying that he definitely cannot be yet, but he definitely has not grabbed a hold of that job. And I can tell you that the Islanders wanted to give him, Jack and company wanted to give him every opportunity to, seize that job, and he has not done it. And I can tell you right now that down the stretch, at least my guess would be that they're going to basically split time evenly, unless one of them all of a sudden just, pitches a couple shutouts in a row, and you say, okay, we're going to roll with you now. But you just hope that they have a clear number one in 2 weeks, because that is the amount of time left until the end of the season. Now it's actually less than 2 weeks.
Kind of like a Matt Stairs type.
Well, did you like the analogy at least? I remember the last analogy that I made. It was like the relief pitcher one.
I'm thinking more like pinch hitter. Guys who excel in the pinch hitting role that were never as good as regular everyday hitters.
Yeah. They can spot start. They can come off the bench as a pinch hitter. They can start a game every once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever, and be okay in that role. But when they get forced into a starting role every day, then all of a sudden you see why they're not an everyday player. But they right now have a situation that they have to hope reconciles itself before the end of the season, because if it doesn't, they are not going to get past the first round.
The list of things that the Islanders need to reconcile their season is getting longer and not shorter, and that's not a good thing with 8 games to go.
Well, I mean, right now, you just look at this team, and they don't look like they are a team that could make a run in the playoffs. I mean, you look at other teams in the league. I mean, you look at a team like Tampa Bay. You look at a team, obviously Washington. Look at a team like Pittsburgh that has been there before, that has players that have won before. You look at the Rangers that are battle-tested, that have advanced in the playoffs. They haven't won a cup, no, but they've advanced multiple times in the playoffs. This Islander team has accomplished nothing. They have won nothing as a group. The coach has won nothing. The GM has won nothing. And the players have all won nothing. They are right now hoping that they can flip a switch, and we can see what we saw from this team, at least flashes of what we saw from this team in 2013 when they made the playoffs, when they had that furious run. Last year, when they got off to a great start, and they looked like one of the best teams in the league for the first half of the season. Right now, they just don't look like that team. They don't look like a team that can play fast like we saw, in the previous couple years, for periods of time. Or a team that can play a heavier physical type game if they need to. Right now, they are a team that doesn't look like they have an identity, and that's what's most alarming to me. And in order for this team to make a legitimate run, they are going to have to figure out what their identity is, and do it quick, because if they don't, they're not going anywhere. And it's that simple.
Well, Cal Duckbutter Cluck needs to put you don't want to say put the team on his back, but he needs to get all these other guys. He's the only guy that's like I feel like is actually stepping up in these critical moments right now.
He's the team MVP. If you ask me right now who the team MVP is, I say it's Cal Clutterbuck, without question. He has had that good of a year, and honestly, you can make the argument that Cal Clutterbuck has to be taken off of that line and moved up in the lineup. You'll hear about how the Islanders have the best fourth line in the league, and I think Mike Milbury made a point. It may have been last Monday prior to the Islander Flyer game. If you keep talking about the fourth line, what is that? What kind of commentary is that on the second and third lines? Because it means that they are probably not carrying their weight, which is exactly what has taken place for a majority of this year with guys like Strome, with guys like Lee, with guys like Bailey, who's been awful. who I mentioned in the Tampa Bay game, had two typical soft Bailey plays that led to goals. In the Carolina game, which we haven't talked about yet on Saturday, had one of the most horrific turnovers that, I mean, you expect a 19-year-old rookie to make, not a guy that's a veteran in this league already. Had basically put the puck on the tape of Jordan Staal right in the slot to give Jordan Staal a prime scoring opportunity. Just threw right out in front of the net, blindly, right out in front. There's Jordan Staal to accept the pass. And I think Butch even made like the right comment, like, "Oh, great pass, Josh," or perfect pass from Josh to Staal, and obviously, two players on opposing teams. If Butch Goring is making wry comments about you, that must be really a terrible indictment of your play. I'll say this:
did Bailey have like a semi breakaway opportunity in that game that he didn't even get a shot off?
I think so. Yeah, in the Carolina game, you mean?
In the third period, yeah, or in overtime.
I think he did. Yeah, I forget.
It was pretty pathetic, actually.
Yeah. Well, it takes us back to the drop pass. I forget which. It was in overtime. I forget which team it was against. Now it was earlier in the season, but he made a drop pass to Kyle Oposo, who I think it was against Colorado actually, who was trailing him and expects him to shoot the puck, and all of a sudden he sees the puck coming back to him, and you can almost see him react like, "What are you doing?" And he just was able to score, and they win. But you could just see him have a look. You had to see him with the look on his face after, like, "What were you doing? You don't drop pass on a breakaway." And it's those reasons why he is just not a good NHL player, despite his skill, despite the ability he has. And honestly, I want to see either Josh Bailey or Ryan Strome taken out of this lineup down the stretch, and I want to see Steve Bernier put in a guy that plays what you're going to get from a guy like that, who can play a good game in the playoffs, your prototypical playoff game, a straight-ahead, physical, forechecking, north-south type of game. I think he could be an asset to the Islanders, and Bailey or Strome have to come out of the lineup. I prefer Bailey because I just want Strome to finally get his head on straight, and the potential exists that he could, contribute to this team down the stretch. At least I'm hopeful. But I have seen enough of Josh Bailey, and his presence on this team exemplifies everything that is wrong with Garth Snow as a general manager, and why he has to be fired the second that they lose in the first round this year, or God forbid they don't make the playoffs. Then he should be thrown out of the third-story window. But if it comes down to that they lose in the first round, the very first thing that the new owners should do, because we know that Charles won't do it, is fire Garth Snow, who keeps trying to shove Josh Bailey down his back to justify his failed first-round pick. And there's my rant on Josh Bailey.
Well, you went from the MVP of the team to the perhaps LVP.
I know. Well, I did. Well, he's had a miserable year, Bailey, too. He's also had and they've had multiple culprits, so it's not all on Josh Bailey. But Josh Bailey, to me, really is really the quintessential issue with this team right now. A guy that plays soft, a guy that does not play fast, a guy that does not think the game well, and somebody that really just needs to take a seat for the rest of the year, because I've seen enough of him. But yeah, Cal Clutterbuck needs to have a bigger role on this team, and if it means playing him with John Tavares, I think that they could very easily make that move and see if it works there. But
would they actually do that with 8 games to go?
I doubt it. I mean, I don't know right now. It's if you're going to tinker with the line, just say do it now. But you are in the middle of a playoff where you're trying to win, and you don't want to necessarily be experimenting. But you know what? I don't think it could hurt. I think.
How much worse can they play? I mean, offensively, they're just not instilling any confidence.
No, they're not. They're not, and you can just see how inconsistent they are on a game-in, game-out basis, and how frustrating it is just to watch a team that has a pretty good amount of NHL caliber talent, and then just continually just be completely inconsistent offensively and just not generate chances, not have it be pinned in their own zone. They lack a transition game right now, which is of course on their D that's not getting the puck up to their forwards, but their forwards contribute by not being in the right spots in the defensive zone. I mean, we're talking right now like this is a team that is below average, and they're competing for a playoff spot. But they should be better than what they are right now, and their record may not be completely reflective of their play. And like I said, if they don't improve their play, You go up against a good team in the playoffs, a Washington, a Tampa, or even a Rangers or a Pittsburgh, they're not going to win. It's that simple unless they improve their play dramatically.
You said how the reference of their fourth line usually indicates that line is the worst of the of the four. I noticed that to start some of these games, Jack actually has the fourth line out. Did you notice that?
Sorry, repeat that question.
Opening face-off, he's had the fourth line out on the ice. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, he'll do that. He'll also put them out after the Islanders score a goal. Sometimes after the Islanders give up a goal, which doesn't.
Like, when do you stop referring to it as the fourth line? Is it simply because now from a minutes perspective?
They're the proverbial fourth line in that they're fourth on the depth chart technically, at least the way Jack goes 1, 2, 3, 4 for a majority of the game before he decides maybe I should start matching up lines. But I mean, from a minute standpoint, I think that it varies. I mean, you'll see players. I mean, Cizikas and Clutterbuck are going to have more minutes because they play in the penalty kill. In terms of even strength minutes, I mean, they're pretty comparable to. You're going to see Tavares and his line mates usually get the bulk of the minutes for the forwards, and then there really isn't that big of a disparity between your second, third, and fourth lines. I mean, I think on average, Cizikas, Martin, and Clutterbuck will play a little bit less than the second and third line players, but it's not a dramatic difference. But
what about Anders Lee? Isn't he another guy that's kind of like not held up to his own?
He's been better. A guy like Anders Lee is limited because he is not a good skater. He's a very poor skater. He doesn't really have that great of hands. He's a guy that you want to win board battles because he's a big player. He's good along the boards, and you need to see him in front of the net. He's at his best when the team starts cycling or on the power play, and he's able to park himself in front of the net. And you've seen him win those one-on-one battles in front. You saw him actually break Anton Strawman's leg or whatever happened to Strawman in that Tampa Bay game because they were battling in front, and Lee just knocked them over.
Right.
In the clean play, I mean, it wasn't a dirty play by any means. They were just battling, and because he's so big and strong, he just knocked them over, and Strawman got his knee caught there, which looked like a pretty bad injury. And you saw him against Letang in that Pittsburgh game a few weeks ago, which I pointed out. I mean, you need him you're going to need him to score those goals in front, those rebound goals, those deflection goals, and win those board battles. That's where he's most valuable. And I think he can be an asset to them in the playoffs. And you just want to see a little more consistency at him, but he has been better. He's not the number one guy on my hit list right now in terms of Islander forwards. Right now, Ryan Strome and Josh Bailey are way ahead of Anders Lee.
So, for the uninformed, Ryan Strome, number 18, Josh Bailey, number 12, for when you watch the games this upcoming week. But let's just, before we get there, let's just see if you had anything further to say about their overtime win at Carolina on Saturday night with, as we alluded to, Cal Clutterbuck playing the hero in overtime.
Again.
I think, he had 2 goals in this game, actually.
Yeah,
he had
scored the tying goal in the third.
Overtime goal. I mean,
and the overtime goal.
Like I said before, put the team on his back, and we've made almost no mention of John Tavares.
Well, you're right.
By the way, over these last 4 games. So,
right.
that's another interesting point. Another guy that I think obviously he needs to do more. I mean, if they can't get offense out of him, then they're in deep trouble.
Yeah, but you need your best player to be your best player.
Yeah, what good did you see out of this game?
They won. That's the good. they won. Essentially, that's what you take out of it. Tavares, I thought, actually played better in this game. I haven't criticized him. It's taboo, I guess, around these parts to criticize John Tavares. But you know what? You expect more out of John Tavares, too, in terms of production. You see Sidney Crosby in Pittsburgh right now carrying that team. Sidney Crosby has been every bit the superstar that he is over the last couple months, but especially since Evgeny Malkin has gone down and that Pittsburgh team has only taken off since then. But Tavares was better in this game. They were up 2-0, and you're thinking, all right, just play a smart road game. not to hold on to the 2-goal lead, but, still try and, be aggressive and try and, score goals. But, just, try and play a smart, controlled, turnover-free road game. Well, before you blinked, it was 3-2 Carolina. I mean, I could break down the goals. The first goal was off a terrible icing. Tavares loses a faceoff very easily. The second goal was a rebound by Berube, but you saw 3 Islander players in front of the goal mouth just watching as the rebound was put in. And then another bad goal by Berube and a bad angle shot that he couldn't handle. Tavares allows his man to beat him to a loose puck and puts it in. And like I said, before you blinked, it was 3-2. And you even heard Howie say, whenever he starts, giving you editorials during his play-by-play, he's pissed off because he said very sloppy play at the blue line in the middle of his play-by-play. So when he's doing that, that even he's disgusted. And then I mentioned Bailey's turnover in this game, which I had to make a note of because it was that horrific. But then the Islanders, of course, were tied. Clutterbuck, tying goal. What else is new? Mr. Clutch for the Islanders off of, I think it was a face-off win, I believe, deep in Carolina's zone. And then a nice pass in front, I think, by Zizekas, and Clutterbuck was able to score to tie the game. And then in overtime, Clutterbuck would shoot the puck off of the Carolina defender's chest, I think, or something. Another very eerie or weird overtime goal, kind of reminiscent of the overtime goal that Kyle Oposo scored, where the puck, Winnipeg, I think, right? Where the puck went off of the defender's face and Oposo just put into an open net. So here they get a break with the puck going off of the defender's chest and in. Game over, Islanders win. They get the 2 points and a huge win, a very, very big win, because if they would have lost this game without getting a point, they would have been in big trouble.
Cal Clutterbuck's shooting percentage now back to above 20%.
Is it real? Wow.
With those 2 goals?
I think it's time that they put him on a line with different, more skilled players, maybe, just to give him more opportunities to unload that shot of his, because he has a really good shot, and he is deserving of more playing time. He is just deserving of more playing time. It's time to get him on a different line. Again, not an indictment on Martin or Zizekas, but he is going to be such an important player for them in the playoffs, and I think it's vital that they get him more minutes.
So, you were mentioning Sidney Crosby and putting the Penguins on his back. So you go back to the All-Star break episode that we had, and we were kind of going through, why is Tavares not on pace to do what we expect him to do statistically? And you mentioned how there were a couple other players in the league, superstar players, that were similarly situated, and one of those players was Sidney Crosby.
Correct.
So now what's and this may be oversimplifying things, but maybe it's not. The Penguins have since the All-Star break gone on a bit of a surge, and I think it's fair to say that it's because of the play of Sidney Crosby.
He's been incredible.
Meanwhile, the Islanders have scuffled a bit, and John Tavares has not really improved his play since the All-Star break. It's been more or less the same, I think, it seems to me. And so it makes you wonder.
He had a really good February. Tavares we talked about how good a February he had. And then in March, he doesn't have a single multi-point game. He only has 8 points in the entire month of March. And there have been games where he has just been almost invisible. Now, is it all his fault? No, he's been double and triple teamed, it seems like, at times in the offensive zone. And, you chalk it up to his line mates, Ryan Strome and Josh Bailey, 2 guys that I've been, admonishing this entire, most of this episode.
Opposing teams could just leave Josh Bailey to roam free, and they
because Josh Bailey doesn't scare you. Exactly. So you're going to double and triple team John Tavares and not give him any kind of time or space to create something. But the bottom line is you're a superstar player, and you're held to a much higher standard, and he has just not lived up to it really over the course of the entire season. And if there's any time for him just to elevate his game in the manner that Sidney Crosby has, it's right now. And look, Sidney Crosby's right now. I mean, Sidney Crosby is one of the best players, and not the best player in the game. I'm not saying John Tavares is at that level, but you know what? He is still an elite player. He is still a superstar player, and he has to play like it, and he has to right now for this team to do it, right? This is it. This is it.
Where are we going to be?
Not now, when? It'll be never.
where are we going to be when we get together again for the next, the next show? I guess a week's time from now. So there's 3 games between now and then. Tomorrow night, these are all home games, by the way, and the Islanders, majority of the games for the rest of the season are at home.
Yeah,
Of the remaining, it's 6 home games to close
and
out
only
the
2,
season.
right? And the only 2 road games, the only one where they actually have to take a bus is Washington,
That's
because
right.
they play the Rangers a few
Man.
miles away.
Look at that! Looks at these 4 games in a row for the Islanders: Penguins, Penguins, Lightning, Capitals, Rangers. Oof! Wow!
Yeah. After Carolina and Columbus, 2 games
Right.
which they have to win. Have to win.
I mean, they
You
have
cannot
to.
lose to those 2 teams at home. If they are a playoff team, you win those games. You
This
beat
is it. You
Carolina
have to take
Saturday,
those.
okay, fine. You beat a terrible Ottawa team last Wednesday, fine. Now you have to do the same thing against those 2 teams, and then, like you said, the gauntlet then begins against Pittsburgh, and then Tampa, Washington, Rangers. Now Washington will have nothing to play for, so you hope that maybe they're resting players at that point. Washington clinched the President's Trophy, so they have literally nothing left to play for at this point. So you hope that maybe there's no Holtby, maybe no
Right.
Ovechkin, as he's been a little banged up from what I understand. But this is it.
But the fact that you have to hope for a team like the Capitals to not be, being at full strength, I think perfectly epitomizes the state of despair that the Islanders are in right now, considering their subpar confidence level.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe they can pull what the Bengals. I'm trying to think of like a good example here of a team that laid down at the end of the season because their season was already over, at least in terms of making the playoffs. So how about the Bengals against the Jets in 2009? What was it, Rex Ryan's first season? Jets won 37-0, and then would go on to beat the Bengals the next week in the playoffs. So maybe the Islanders will beat the Capitals maybe like 6-1 without their starting goalie in net or no Ovechkin or. And then maybe if they play them in the first round, maybe they'll duplicate that and win 4 straight games, right?
Look, I mean, there are 8 games left here where the Islanders can turn around. That is that is enough games, So they got the next 4 games are all at home, and we mentioned that gauntlet stretch too. So it's like you said, Carolina and then Columbus coming up this week, Tuesday and Thursday, and then Saturday, our dreaded Saturday afternoon game
Yeah,
at
well,
home against Pittsburgh. Yeah, and then then they host Tampa Bay next week, and that stretch. And of course, who do they play the last game of the season? Your Philadelphia Flyers.
could it be for the playoffs? Could it be to win and in, lose and out? Could it be one of those type games? Hopefully not.
Well,
Let's
we'll
hope it's
see.
not. Hopefully they're just resting on their laurels at that point, that they're already solidified into a spot. And they don't need that game. That game, won't have any value. Although I'm sure that even if they are in a playoff position at that point, that it'll still have meaning because they may be trying to get the number 2 or 3 spot within a division to avoid Washington or Tampa in the first round. So
let's try to end this on an uplifting note, unless there's anything else that you want to mention. What I wanted to get out of you is, look, we've been pretty critical of the team tonight, and understandably so. But the reality is this team needs to instill confidence in themselves and go on a run. And so if you're behind the bench and you're trying to get them going, like what are you doing? What are you doing to get them to step up their play? Let's get pumped about this, or give us something that makes us feel like this team can actually, be competitive in the playoffs.
Well, I'll tell you what. Instead of putting my coaching hat on, I'll put Jack's coaching burger in my mouth, and I'll just pretend like I'm talking with a burger in my mouth. So, like I said, I want either Bailey or Strome benched. I want one of them benched now because I want Bernier in. I want to get him games before the playoffs because I'm going to want Bernier in the playoffs because he plays a type of game that you need in order to be successful in the playoffs. So that's the first thing I do. I move Clutterbuck up to maybe the first line with Tavares. Maybe give him try him with Tavares, see what happens. Maybe you throw like a. They're not going to break up that Oposo Nielsen Kuhlman line, as that line has actually been pretty good. Maybe you put an Anders Lee with them, maybe you keep Strome or Bailey, whoever you don't bench with them. I'd have to look at that, but I keep Prince in right now. I think Prince has been okay. I think he plays the type of game that again can translate well into the playoffs. But like I said, Stromer Bailey's taking a seat, and I moved Clutterbuck up to Tavares' line. I put Bernier with Cizikas and Martin. And
Bernier we've barely seen. I mean, he's played 20 games this year, and he's been healthy, right, all year?
Yeah, he's just been a healthy scratch. But again, the type of game that he plays is exactly the style that you look for from players in the playoffs. North-south type of game. He skates actually pretty well. He has a little bit of offensive ability. He's scored double-digit goals multiple times in his career. He can play a physical game. He can play a good forechecking game. So I think that he would slip onto that line with Zekas and Martin pretty well. But not drastic moves, but again, they don't really have too much in terms of options, at least in terms of making drastic lineup moves. So keep Straight out of the lineup. Of course, we saw Straight right back in on Saturday after that debacle on Friday. It must have been all Ryan Pulak's fault that they lost, right? It's all Pulak's fault. Bench him for Straight. Get Straight back in there. You know what? How about you bench Hickey, who's been terrible? But I get Pulak right back in the lineup, put Straight on the bench, and maybe they'll actually be able to get Zidlicki or Pelech back, as Pelech apparently has been skating. So we'll see how that plays out over the last couple of weeks of the season, because Hickey has been terrible to the point where you can actually consider benching him. That's how bad he's been. But there you go. There's my coaching burger, at least with the moves with the coaching burger in my mouth. All right.
Oh yeah, I'll squeeze it in. I actually almost forgot the hipster moment of Zenith.
HMOZ.
Yeah, I completely forgot about it, but then remembered that you forgot to do yours last time, and so we can't let 2 episodes go by without one. So I'm just trying to pull up the picture here. We were at the Barclays Center for the Islanders-Flyers game, and it was during, I believe, one of the intermission. And they have those on the big screen above the ice. They have like those racing games where there's like you pick a color of like a skater on the board, and they race, and they go back and forth, and you get excited if the guy that you picked initially ends up winning, right? Well,
it's like the great Zamboni race that they used to do at the Coliseum. That's one thing that they've moved to the Barclays Center, I guess, at the behest of the Islander fans. But anyway,
so I'm pulling up the picture now. There were four skaters, and what they actually did was they put the girls that do the cleaning, I guess, during the timeouts, or
the maintenance,
the ice shavings, right?
Right.
So they had them lined up on the ice in 4 different spots, holding the flag of the color of a different color for each of the guys on the screen. Now remember, this is a computer-generated race. It's not like real people are racing. And they're actually standing in different positions, waving the flag. And I remember watching the one, I think it was yellow, was leading. And you could see this woman like shaking the flag like, what is this, a joke? While she's on the ice. And I think, well, do they really need like human beings to cheer on a computer generated race that's predetermined to get people excited? Like, what is going on? I mean, is this is the best you can do for a halftime show? I'd rather watch the Zamboni clean the ice. Frankly.
I actually didn't know. I mean, I saw the race, the animated race on the scoreboard, but I didn't notice the girls with the flags. I didn't see that. That's interesting.
I don't know, can you see it there? You might
Where?
be. Yeah, see it on the. Can you? Zoom in a bit there.
Yeah, no, I did. Yep, I see it. Yep. It's pretty lame. And they actually, and the intermissions are a minute longer or whatever than they used to be. So that's the best that they can do for that.
Although our suite did get a T-shirt on the T-shirt toss, so that was a nice little, which we promptly gave away to the kid in the booth next door, which was a nice gesture. In any event, so we had a good time, that in the suite, and we're gonna go back to being amongst the crowd on Thursday against the Blue Jackets.
That's right.
In a game that they got to win these games. I mean, if you're going to be serious about a playoff push, you got to beat these teams. So, all right,
Must wins.
all right, must win. Until next time. All right.
All right. Well, actually, no. One more thing I just want to get in there.
Yeah,
We're
let's get
talking
it in. Yes.
on a high note. But I want to comment on the interview between Howie Rose and Scotty Bowman. I don't know if you saw it on Friday, the first intermission of the Tampa Bay game. Really a wonderful interview. Scotty Bowman, of course, one of the great coaches in the history of professional sports. I think he has 14 Stanley Cups to his name, 9 as a coach, I think it was, and 5 as a front office guy. The last few with the Blackhawks, as he's some kind of advisor, I think, with the Blackhawks now, and his son Stan is the general manager there. But it was really a wonderful interview. He talked about Al Arbor, as Al Arbor started under him, played for him in St. Louis in the late 60s when the NHL expanded, and he talked about coaching Hall of Fame legendary players like Dickie Moore and who was the other guy? Doug Harvey, and I wish I didn't know that they were on those teams. And this is much later in their careers, and then he would win with the Canadiens, and then with the Penguins, and then with the Red Wings, and just had an abundance of success as a coach. And I'll just also to reminisce about that '93 Islanders team, which was the last time that the Islanders won a playoff series. Was one of the great upsets in sports, as the Al Arbor-led Islanders beat the Scotty Bowman coach Pittsburgh Penguins in their 5 or 6 Hall of Famers, whatever it was. So, but it was a great interview. Scotty Bowman, who's 80-something years old, is still as sharp as a tack. I mean, he's great. It was a great listen, great interview. So well done.
Yeah, I didn't actually see the interview itself, but I did see them advertise that it was going to be aired about 37 times in the period during, and that made me feel like I got enough of it that I didn't actually have to watch it. Because I kept showing Scotty Bowman like not watching the game in a suite. So I'm like, all right,
next. Good. It was cool though. Just because he is a legendary figure.
I know.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Okay, so we'll see where we are. We'll be down to, the plan is, I guess, the next show maybe on Sunday night, and there'll be 5 games left in the season. So I'm sure we'll feel great about Thomas Greiss being the number 1 over the next 3 games, because we'll probably only play in 2 of them.
It's anybody's guess who's going to be starting those next few games. I couldn't tell you. I have no idea.
All right. Well, until next time. Yes. Bye. All right. Bye. All right.
Next.
All right. Timothy. Bye. Timothy. Bye.